is that I think we've all recognized the fact that unmanned systems are here to stay. They're a part of modern warfare, and whether it's here in the homeland or overseas, we want to make sure that we're doing due diligence to protect our forces and protect our equities from a national security standpoint. So, I think you'll see us continuing to look at that, and it's something we're going to continue to take seriously.
What systems are being sent, and when will they arrive?
In addition to some of the capabilities that are already on these installations, these capabilities essentially will enhance space authorities' ability to detect, identify, track UASs. For example, this could include active or passive detection capabilities, plus capabilities like the system known as drone busters, which, as you know, employs non-kinetic means to interrupt drone signals, affect their ability to operate. All right, Kelly.
You mentioned that it wasn't all that unusual to see some drones over military bases. You mentioned this is becoming more and more of a common occurrence in the use of drones. But what would constitute it as a threat? What is the benchmark, and have you been communicating with other military installations to be ready for more of these drones, and how to spot if it could be a threat before it might be too late?
Yeah. Again, it won't surprise you. This is not a new conversation for us within DoD. I mean, as I highlighted, drones flying, whether here or overseas, is not something new, right? And especially in the United States with 1 million registered drones and 8,500 flying on any given day. Similar to vehicles that may inadvertently approach a base, the same can be true for drones. As to what constitute a threat, that obviously has to be assessed on a case-by-case basis, depending on what the drone is doing, where it's going, and so I'm not going to provide a blanket definition, but again, the idea here is that by providing training, capabilities, resources, commanders are able to assess and make those determinations. The other thing that I think it's very important to remember is that when we're here in the homeland, the authorities that the U.S. military has to detect and track these kinds of things is much different than it would be if we were in a combat zone. In other words, the intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance capabilities that we can employ outside the United States are much different for very good reasons. We don't collect intelligence on American citizens. And so that, of course, appropriately requires to work very closely with local, state, and federal authorities, law enforcement authorities, when necessary to address these threats.
And you mentioned the White House and the administration did share a bit of their assessment of what these drones are, but we know lawmakers are being briefed on Capitol Hill, and members of the public, this isn't really, sitting well with them. They aren't really kind of taking this explanation for those that really saw these drones with their own eyes. So what would you say to them?
Well, again, I definitely don't want to minimize the significant interest and the concern that people have. But again, I think in the way that you now have this modern technology and the ability, you could go out of here right after this briefing and go and buy a drone, and you could fly it around your neighborhood. And as long as you're flying it appropriately and not in restricted airspace, there's nothing illegal about flying that drone. So again, just providing some perspective here, and I think the joint statement that we put out highlighted that the assessment in terms of what these reported sightings could be in terms of a combination of lawful commercial drones, hobbyist drones, law enforcement drones, as well as manned fixed-wing aircraft. Again, don't want to minimize it, but I think it's important to understand too just the volume of drone activity that will likely only increase into the future, and the fact that it is legal to fly drones, and if they go into restricted airspace, of course, we'll take appropriate action.
Just why does it have to be a classified briefing if these are just hobbyist drones, they're not military drones? Why is it a classified briefing on the Capitol Hill?
I'd have to refer you to Congress on that. Again, sharing as much information as we can here. I don't have the briefing in front of me, so I can't tell you specifically, what aspects are classified or not. I can assure you, though, that again, we are sharing as much information as we can based on what we know. Let me go to the other side of the room here, Chris.
Thanks, Pat. two questions on drones. One, there's particular interest perhaps by us, but also from the U.S. government regarding the drones in New Jersey. Does the Pentagon have any indications that those drones in New Jersey are somehow different in size, activity, etc., than the drones that have been spotted at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, Hill Air Force Base, and other locations in the past few days?
Chris, what I would tell you is we don't see a connection at this point between any of those activities. Again, just taking a step back here, 8,500 drone flights a day, but again, don't see a connection at this stage.
And then my second question, has the Pentagon determined who was responsible for the drone incursions over the bases in the UK over the past month, last month?
Yeah, to my knowledge, still being looked at. I'd have to refer you to the UK MOD and US Air Forces in Europe. Janie.
Thank you, General. Two questions on South Korea and China. First question, on China's espionage using drone. China conducted indiscriminate espionage activities using drones on U.S. aircraft carriers and military facilities anchored in South Korea. What message do you want to send to China, which poses a security threat to many allies?
What's the message to China?
Yes.
Look, Janie, I'm not going to get into any specific, operations overseas other than to say, we take force protection, operation security very seriously. We value the partnerships that we have with our allies throughout the Indo-Pacific region and worldwide as we work together towards our mutual security interests. And so wherever there is a potential threat, we, of course, will take measures to mitigate, but I'll just leave it there.
On South Korea, the security vacuum is in chaos due to the president suspended his work, and the military leadership also as well as suspended. Is there any disruption in the U.S.-South Korea alliance, and who is the Secretary Austin, the current dialogue partner?
Yeah, so right up front, I would say, and you've heard Secretary Austin say this, the alliance between the United States and the ROK is ironclad. We continue to remain committed to peace and security of the Korean Peninsula, and our combined defense posture remains strong. I know that General LaCamera spoke with the acting Republic of Korea president on Sunday. He emphasized the strength of the alliance and reaffirmed commitment to pre-planned training and exercises. He also spoke with the acting Minister of Defense on Thursday on the same topic. So don't have anything to read out right now in terms of potential phone calls with Secretary Austin and the acting Defense Minister in the future, but certainly we'll keep you updated. Let me go to Eunice.
Thank you very much, General. The Turkish Defense Minister says Ankara had proposed to Washington that they can assign 3 commander brigades to help fight Daesh and also control prisons where ISIS militants and their families are held. Those are your biggest concerns right now, especially after the fall of the Assad regime. So this is your NATO ally saying that surely if there was such a partnership between the US and Turkey, these are the 2 largest militaries within their alliance. Why not just team up? Is it just lack of trust? You just don't believe them, or you like to specifically work with the SDF?
Yeah, thanks for the question. As you highlight, Turkey is a very valued NATO ally, and we continue to keep lines of communication open as it relates to the situation in Syria, as it relates to regional security interests like ISIS. I don't have anything to announce in terms of any changes in U.S. force posture or how we're approaching the defeat ISIS mission, but I'm confident that we'll continue to keep having those conversations with Turkey and other regional partners on this issue.
Just one follow-up, please. The Turkish foreign minister just on the same day said that the YPG, or as you call them, the SDF, will either dissolve itself or be destroyed in Syria. Is the United States going to militarily step in? I'd asked this question before because Turkey stresses it very clearly that they're going to be destroyed. Or you can work with us and we can sort out the Daesh problem in Syria. Like, how do you approach this statement and like this behavior?
Yeah, I don't have a comment to provide on the foreign minister's comment. What I would say is what I've relayed before, which is that the SDF remains an important partner. I think it's important to remember what Daesh or ISIS is capable of, as we've seen in the past, and we all have a vested interest in ensuring that they cannot resurge. And so I know, again, we're speaking with our Turkish counterparts and others in the region as it relates to the challenges associated with ISIS, as well as the SDF and the continued important role they play in preventing a resurgence of ISIS. And so we'll continue to have those conversations, and I'll just leave it there. Let me get to a couple other folks here real quick. Let me go to Jeff Shogel, Task and Purpose.
Thank you. Have any of the drone sightings been accompanied with sightings of a large rectangular black object, sometimes called a monolith, often accompanied by Also sprach Zarathustra by Richard Strauss?
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. I would probably have to think back to the words of a very wise prophet, Obi-Wan Kenobi, who said, "These aren't the drones you're looking for." But beyond that, I'll just have to move along. Okay, let me go to Howard Altman, Warzone.
Thanks. Well, that was hard to top. I got two questions, one on the drones and one on Syria. I know you told Chris that these are not seeing, you're not seeing any connections, but in terms of visual or sensor data that is of the drones that have been seen over the U.S. bases, both CONUS and no CONUS, what similarities are you seeing in visual and sensor data? My question on Syria is Muslim Abdi, the head of SDF, is proposing a proposal to establish a demilitarized zone in Kobani with the redistribution of security forces under American supervision and presence. Is the U.S. familiar with this? And does the U.S. have any ability to have additional forces or additional presence in that region? Thanks.
Thanks, Howard. On your first question, I'm not going to have any information to provide in terms of sensor data, other than, again, as I highlighted earlier, we are employing a variety of both passive and active sensors in order to detect, as it pertains to DoD installations. And of course, we're not the only ones in this business when it comes to U.S. civil airspace. I'd certainly refer you to DHS and FAA on that front. As far as Kobani goes, and the ceasefire discussions between groups that are there and the SDF and others, that's something that we're obviously monitoring closely. As I highlighted to your colleague, I think we all have a vested interest in ensuring that groups in the region capitalize on the situation here to enable the people of Syria to be able to have a better life than they did under the Assad regime. But as it relates to the U.S. force presence in Syria, it is focused on the defeat ISIS mission. And so that continues to be our focus. And I'll just leave it there. Let me come back into the room. Noah.
CENTCOM didn't specify where the strikes took place yesterday within Syria, where American equipment was used. Do you have anything more on that?
What I could tell you, Noah, is you're talking about the counter-ISIS, defeat ISIS strikes. Yes, those were in the Badia Desert. What I'm tracking is it was 4 separate locations, and CENTCOM assesses that 12 ISIS members were killed.
Thank you.
John.
Thank you, General. North Syria again. We know that you are actively involved in negotiation between the Free Syrian Army and the SDF, especially in the area of Manbij. But other than that, in the south, in cities like Raqqa and Deir ez-Zor, there are a lot of protests against the SDF. And especially the Arab population in this area, they claim that the SDF was collaborating with the Assad regime, and they see them as complicit. And after the fall of the regime, they want them out of their neighborhood. What do you say about these kind of requests from the local Syrians in those areas? And do you think that will create a possible threat for U.S. forces?
Well, as I'm sure you can appreciate, I'm not going to delve into domestic Syrian politics other than to say, again, we recognize the situation right now in Syria is fragile, particularly as it relates to the post-Assad regime. U.S. forces have been working closely with SDF for years now on the Defeat ISIS mission, and that continues to be our focus. I won't speak for the SDF or what the local population may or may not be saying, other than, again, I think we all have a vested interest in ensuring that ISIS is not allowed to regroup and resurge and return to the kinds of activities that we saw previously. Got time for just a couple more.
I have another question. The leadership of the Assad regime, most of them who are criminals involved in slaughtering their own people, and very possibly in the future there will be courts against these names. We know Bashar al-Assad flew right away to Moscow, but rest of his team, do you have any idea how did they get out of the country, or do you follow any intelligence about personalities like Maher Assad, his brother?
Yeah, I don't have anything to provide from the podium here. Let me go to Mike.
Thank you, General Pat. One question on Syria. Since last week, the Turkish-backed Syrian National Army and militants are amassing around the controlled areas of SDF. Are you engaging with Turkey on this? And do you think a Turkish incursion into northeast of Syria is imminent?
Again, I won't speak for Turkey in terms of what they may or may not do. And then I'm sorry, the first part of your question, negotiating with who?
Yeah, the Turkish-backed forces in around Kobani, amassing around Kobani to invade Kobani. Are you engaging with Turkey on this?
Again, I think I kind of already addressed this. Broadly speaking, the U.S. is communicating with Turkey about the situation in Syria writ large and keeping lines of communication as it relates to the post-Assad regime, trying to ensure that the people of Syria are able to experience security and stability. But from a U.S. military standpoint, our focus in Syria continues to be on the enduring defeat of ISIS. Okay, let me get to Jim, and then I'll come to you, and then we'll close it up. Jim.
General, just to Syria again, given all the unrest, are the and the counter-ISIS mission there, are the U.S. forces able to pursue that mission, and is the force protection measures, given the unrest, adequate for what's happening now?
Yes, I mean, that as evidenced by the counter-ISIS strike we took a couple days ago. So yes, they are able to conduct their mission, and of course, as it has always been, force protection remains a top priority for our forces in Syria.
There are no plans to add more forces there?
I don't have anything to announce right now in terms of change of force posture. Carl?
Thank you. You've made it very clear that we are in Syria, the U.S. is in Syria to counter ISIS. You've said that several times. But our partner in that fight is the SDF, and the commander is now saying that he wants to propose a demilitarized zone because of these tensions with Turkey, and is asking for American supervision and presence. So is the Pentagon willing to consider that proposal to have U.S. boots on the ground in place to help that demilitarized zone?
Carla, as I'm sure you can appreciate, I'm not going to make policy from the podium here. You know, obviously we continue to communicate very closely with the SDF as our defeat ISIS partner, but I'm not going to have any updates on in terms of change of mission right now. Last question, Mike.
I know you're hoping for a drone question, so let me oblige you.
Okay.
You say that there are these sightings. Why do most of the sightings seem to be around New Jersey? I mean, it's the Garden State and all, but what is so special about New Jersey that it's getting most of the attention from this? I've never seen drones here. I've never seen them flying around Virginia. And second question, drone-related question. I know we are building on you're developing the military's ability to detect drones. Are you also working on their ability to defeat drones in the air?
Yeah, absolutely. Your last question, and I would encourage you to go take a look at the counter unmanned strategy that we put out, just last week that talks about the approach that we're going to take. And that includes the ability to defeat drones both kinetically and non-kinetically. And so, again, looking at places like Ukraine, we've seen the impact that drones can have on the battlefield, and so it's something that the department's taking very seriously. As for your question in terms of the preponderance of sightings, reported sightings in the New Jersey Northeast corridor, I can't answer that question, Mike. Again, personal experience, I have seen drones in D.C. I've seen drones, personal drones flying around. And as I've mentioned from this podium before, one of my close relatives is a private drone operator. And I'm sure some of that person's neighbors have often wondered, what that drone is doing. Without taking a holistic snapshot of every single privately operated drone across the United States, some of which can be that big, some of which can be that big, it's hard to know specifically, why at this point in time. And again, as was highlighted in the joint statement, the current assessment explains what we think most of those are, to include piloted manned aircraft. The last thing I would say on it, again, completely understand the concerns, completely, will reinforce we're taking this seriously. It's sometimes when you focus on something, suddenly you notice more. And so, there's always the potential that because of the heightened awareness, now we're just more aware of this particular issue. But again, we'll continue to take this very seriously. We'll continue to take appropriate action if and when it's deemed that any of these drones near U.S. military installations pose a threat. But in the meantime, again, I think it's been very clear that we've not identified that any of these reported drone sightings were assessed as anomalous, or that it presented a national security or public safety risk over civilian airspace in New Jersey or other states in the Northeast. All right.
You're ruling out, Pat, that this is part of this testing corridor between Dover Air Force Base and Joint Base McGuire?
Yes. A All right.
Can I ask you a follow-up? I apologize. It's based off his question.
Now, you just came in the briefing room, so.
Negative. I came in.
You've been here the whole
You flew in on your drone?
Yeah. But thank you.
That's okay.
Normally my pattern, but thank you. You talked about the military bases. Has there been a surge in counter detection equipment that has been sent to military bases? I'm aware that DHS has sent other equipment to the New Jersey area. Is any of that include DoD equipment, or is that strictly all DHS?
As I highlighted earlier for Picatinny, we did send some additional active and passive detection capabilities, as well as some counter drone capabilities. Those are the only ones, and Earl, those are the only ones I'm tracking right now. But again, if we need to look at other installations, we certainly can, but I don't have anything else to.
When you say active and passive, I mean, that is just strictly detection, or is that actually to bring drones down?
So active and passive detection, different methods to be able to detect drones using different capabilities, right? So passive measures would essentially be it just has the ability to receive signals without emitting signals, whereas active would be like radar. I bounce the signal off and it bounces back, right? And then separate from that would be counter UAS capabilities, things like let me make sure I get the name right here, like drone busters, which essentially emits a signal which is able to interrupt the signal on the drone, which can affect its flight. So that's a methodology that we have that is able to essentially bring drones down non-kinetically should we need to do that.
And is any of the DHS equipment similar to this, or is that?
I mean, I'd refer you to them, but short answer is yes. Okay. All right. Thanks very much, everybody. Appreciate it.